John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. Covers the league, NFL National League, FanRag Sports, NFL. He joins us every day at this time to talk some football, as we do here, John. And that Super Bowl still at the tip of everybody's tongue. And we didn't really dive a lot into the game so much yesterday, so I do want to get some more of your takes on the particular game. We talked a lot about the Pro Football Hall of Fame on yesterday's show, but obviously the big conversation in that game was the Falcons and that one drive where they end up throwing the football. And we kind of got into that discussion last year. Should they have ran it? Should they have with the Seahawks? But who do you put the blame on in that situation? Is that Shanahan? Would you go to Dan Quinn? I mean, when you look at why the Falcons lost the game, what stands out?
Well, there's a lot of things to pin on, but if I got to pick one, I'm looking at Matt Ryan. He's the MVP of the league. He's the leader of that team. After the Julio Jones catch, which was brilliant and would have went down in Super Bowl lore if they kicked the field goal and the Edelman catch doesn't happen, now it's just a footnote. Think about that. They were 1st and 10 at the 22-yard line. Game over. Game is over. You get the sack. You get the holding call. They don't even attempt a field goal. And to me, I look at the sack specifically because you're a veteran quarterback. You understand the situation. There's one thing you can't do, and that's take a sack. And if I point to one thing, I'm pointing to that. But if you think about it as a whole, there were so many things that had to go right for the Patriots to come back in that football game. Atlanta had just had to make one play. Could have been offensively, could have been defensively, and they couldn't make it. So there's a lot of people to blame. A lot of people contributed to the loss. It wasn't just Matt Ryan. But when you're the MVP of the league and you're not understanding situational football in the biggest moment of your career, that's going to follow you until you actually win one.
What about the role of Shanahan, who obviously got a head coaching job, and there's a lot of people, laughing that, hey, maybe the 49ers want to rescind that offer. He makes two pretty egregious play calls in that situation. Yeah,
I mean, look, the 49ers are still happy. You're not going to just boil it down to that. That was the 8th best offense of all time, scoring-wise. So, unfortunately, he wasn't able to put the period on his career in Atlanta by winning a game they should have won. And he certainly deserves some criticism for the play calling. Really, in a lot of ways, it was a Chip Kelly game offensively for the Falcons. They were so explosive early and with the quick drives and the quick points. And then it's sort of like, what do you do when you have a 25-point lead? Do you let up on the gas? Do you try to run out the clock? Do you keep the pressure on, keep throwing the football? What do you do? And that's the problem. That's a lot of the problems Chip Kelly had here. And the time of possession hurt. That was a gas team defensively. They had nothing left. They were just on the field too much. So we know a lot about that in Philadelphia. And it's a tough situation to be in, and obviously it didn't work out for Kyle Shanahan and the Falcons.
No, but you look at in that particular situation in the third down spot where it's just like, all right, because even after the sack and they take that sack, they're still in position to kick, yes, albeit a 50-plus yarder, still in position to at least attempt a field goal. Instead, they go and throw, and then they get the holding penalty, which brings them back 10 more yards, which takes them out of the opportunity to even attempt a field goal.
Yeah, and again, I put that more on the players. Matt Ryan obviously has to understand the situation on the sack. You can't take the sack. You sort of have to trust your quarterback, especially when he's an all-pro quarterback and he's a veteran. He's got to understand that. And then, as you mentioned, yeah, you're not just going to settle for a 53-yard field goal or whatever it would have been. That's not something you're comfortable with. So you're going to try to get something back to put it in a more manageable distance. And then you got to look at Matthews. That was a holding call. That was a blatant holding call.
Yeah.
It wasn't sort of something you can point at the officials and blame them. It was obvious. And again, I mean, that's a player not executing. I can't really blame that on the coach.
What'd you think of the officials in the game? I mean, they were a story all season long. Were they a story on Sunday?
No, I thought they were fine. I didn't think there was much to complain about from the officiating standpoint. There was nothing that had people really in an uproar. And by and large, they let guys play for the most part. And that's always the best way to go about it in a high-profile game, because the last thing you want is officials deciding the game. Obviously, there was the pass interference call late, and actually in overtime that set up the touchdown, but that was another obvious call. So, I mean, when calls like that happen, you have to throw the flag.
John, as far as the play calling goes, when it's 3rd and 1 and they decide to drop back and try and throw a pass, that's on Kyle Shanahan, right? That's not on Matt Ryan. That's on Kyle Shanahan to call a pass call.
Yeah,
and they
I
didn't
agree
force
with that.
they didn't force timeouts like the Patriots would have maybe had to use timeouts. Even if they run for no gain, the Patriots might try to use a timeout.
And by no, if it's 3rd and 1, I'm certainly running the football. It's not like they have bad running backs, and they were pretty effective running the football, certainly in the first half. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty to blame them for. I'm not saying that, but I think as a whole, when you're that explosive, and there were the constant X plays in the first half where you're just gashing the Patriots again and again and again, and when they did score, they scored quickly. That's where I bring up the Chip Kelly comparison. It's like, in a way, it almost hurts a little bit when you do score, because you score so quickly and your defense is right back out there. And the time of possession and the play, the number of plays each team ran was very lopsided in New England's advantage. And I think that's what showed up in the second half of that game.
How about Dan Quinn? Because I picked Kyle Shanahan as the GOAT when we talked about this yesterday, and I'm continuing to maintain that Kyle Shanahan calling the run play, not calling a run play, and calling pass plays is the problem. Mike seems to be putting more of the blame on Dan Quinn. Do you hold the head coach accountable?
Well, I hold everybody accountable. I mean, if you think about that defense, and it really was a tale of two games, because they were spectacular early. And then late, as I mentioned, all they had to do was make one play. And it could have been on one of the 2-point conversions. Just one play, and that entire comeback, and the game is over. And they weren't able to do it. And there's a lot of ways you can point fingers. We just pointed them at Kyle. We pointed them on the time of possession and the fact that defense was on the field for so much, and they were obviously gassed. But whoever, a star player on that team, whether it's Vic Beasley or Dwight Freeney, who may have played his last game and played his heart out, or Deion Jones, who was so spectacular early, or Neal, any one of them could have made a play to win that football game. They didn't do it.
Does it trouble you that Kyle Shanahan, he said after the game, you don't think just run the ball and make your guy kick a 50-yard field goal? They were on the 23-yard line. That's a 43-yard field goal. Is that the heat of the moment, him not remembering correctly, or is he trying to spin the facts to fit his narrative?
What he was saying, they were 1st and 10 at the 22 after Julio made the catch. And then you had the big sack and the holding penalty. So, yeah, I mean, it's egregious that when you're 1st and 10 in the Super Bowl at the 22-yard line and the clock is down where it is, that you don't even attempt a field goal in that situation. That's unforgivable. And you can point at Shanahan, you can point at Ryan, you can point at Matthews. They all contributed to that. And the pass protection.
John, it's one of the maybe more memorable series and epic collapses.
Oh, sure. As I said, I mean, you're at the 22-yard line with a veteran kicker. That game's over. You could kick it on first down. That game's over. If you kick after Julio makes that catch, that Super Bowl is over.
Right. After that catch is where it really gets like, all right, you're in clear field goal range. If the worst case scenario is you get stuffed for no gain or a yard loss and the Patriots burn their 3 timeouts and you kick a field goal and you're up, 11?
Right. No timeouts are burned. To John's point, Matt Bryant, 78.2% of his career kicks between 40 and 49 yards. Find a way to kick the field goal.
Yeah, and remember, it's indoors. The roof is closed, so you don't have to worry about wind. You don't have to worry about weather. He's not missing that kick. You can say you never say never because of the enormity of the stage, but it's a veteran guy. It's sort of like 98% Atlanta was going to win that game entering the fourth quarter. It's 99% Matt Bryant's going to kick that field goal. So, yeah, do I want to run it 3 times right into the middle of the line? That's what I would have done. So I certainly blame the offensive coordinator. But I also don't want to take it all off of Matt Ryan because I think, he showed trust in a superstar player, and the superstar player let him down.
My problem, John, is that the only person that doesn't seem to be taking the blame in this scenario is Kyle Shanahan. His initial answer is you don't just run the ball and try to make your guy kick a 50-yard field goal. Ryan talked after the game to the NFL Network and said, you know what, for me, I wish I could have found a way to throw it away and not lose that yardage. So he at least is taking ownership of the mistake. The problem that I have is that Kyle Shanahan seems oblivious to the fact that, hey, maybe if you ran the ball 3 times, even if you didn't pick up a yard, that was the critical error.
Yeah, and I think when he spoke to that, he was talking about after the sack and when they were backed up, then he wasn't going to just run the football and settle for a 50-yard field goal. But if you take it back to the play and ask them the question, when you have the ball at the 22, why didn't you run it 3 straight times and let Bryant win the game for you? That maybe is pinning him down in a better situation because that's where the mistake was really made.
John McMullen's with us here. Of course, you can check out John's stuff at JF McMullen on Twitter, his national coverage of the NFL, FanRag NFL. How about today, this out of the blue, Steve Sarkisian gets named the offensive coordinator in Atlanta. And my spinoff question to that is because does Atlanta to you have legs? Last year I thought Carolina had legs. I thought 15-1. This team is going to be a problem for years. They were young. You got the MVP of the league. It sounds like a similar scenario in Atlanta. But do you think the Falcons have legs because of losing Shanahan? And what do you think of that roster long term?
Well, I think even in loss, it was pretty evident who had more talent on the field Sunday, and it wasn't the Patriots. It certainly was the Falcons, and they have a lot of young talent. But that loss is so devastating. It can go either way. It really can, and that's where the head coach comes into it because you have to find a way to get these guys to recover from that, and it's not going to be easy because everybody on the planet thought that game was over. I mean, 28-3 in the Super Bowl. Nobody had ever come back from a 10-point deficit. The Patriots come back from 25. It was the definition of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, and the way it happened. In the constant play, the Edelman catch, obviously, will go down in Super Bowl history. In the 2 2-point conversions, not 1, 2, and then losing the coin toss. So many things went the Patriots' direction. It's going to be tough to overcome from a mental standpoint. Physically, look, that offense is loaded. They should be good for years to come. We know how good Julio Jones is. You saw just how lively and athletic and the legs Freeman has. Santa's a great complementary receiver. The offensive line is a lot better. As you mentioned, Steve Sarkisian, I thought that was an interesting hire because he's had so many personal problems. And we'll see how that works out. But Pete Carroll recommended him. And obviously, Pete Carroll has a history with Dan Quinn. He has a history with Sarkisian dating back to USC, and that recommendation was good enough for Dan Quinn. It's a bold move, though, because Guy has had a lot of off-the-field alcohol problems, and we'll see. I mean, this is a high-stress job, and it only gets you can say Alabama. He was calling the plays in the national championship game, and that's a big stage, but it gets even bigger in the NFL.
John McMullen, everybody, at JF McMullen. We will preview the offseason. We'll be all over free agency, the draft, and we'll look at what the Eagles will do this offseason as we push forward with our NFL mandatory every day, 4:05. John McMullen right here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN.
You sound better about that, Mike.
I can't wait. Are you kidding me? I'm looking forward to the first cut. Last year was Riley Cooper, day after Super Bowl. Take it easy, pal. Here's your pink slip. Who'll be the first guy cut by the Eagles?
Unfortunately, I'm going to go Connor Barwin.
Ooh, bold statement early. All right, we'll see. Could be somebody. Hey, would you be surprised if it was someone tomorrow?
No, I would not. I wouldn't be surprised this afternoon. We still got time.
All right. We'll keep an eye on it at JF McMullen and 97.3 ESPN.com. Thanks, John.
Hey, thank you, guys.